I'm Caleb Warren, I'm 35, and I discovered my entire family was staging a hostile takeover of my $2.3 million building through a series of gleeful text messages. Before I tell you how their celebratory party turned into a mass eviction, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. I'd love to see how far this story has traveled. It started on a Sunday. Most people are relaxing, enjoying the last few hours of the weekend. Not me. I was in my ground floor office at the Alder Street building, hunched over spreadsheets. The smell of stale coffee and ambition hung in the air. This building wasn't just brick and mortar to me. It was 8 years of my life, of sleepless nights, of risks that paid off. It was my proof to myself and to the world that I could build something on my own. My phone buzzed, a frantic vibration against the polished oak of my desk. It was my younger sister, Chloe. Not a call, but a string of rapid-fire texts. Cal, you need to see this. Now, are you sitting down? Call me the second you read this. I'm serious. Below her messages, a screenshot loaded. It was from a family group chat I'd muted months ago, titled Warren Clan Updates. My stomach tightened. I never muted Chloe, but the rest of them? The constant stream of my brother Leo's artistic struggles and my mother's passive-aggressive inspirational quotes was too much. I zoomed in on the screenshot. My blood ran cold. It was a message from my mother, Eleanor. Okay, everyone, let's finalize the plan for the Alder building. Leo is taking the 3rd floor for his new studio. The light is just perfect for his work. Aaron gets the 2nd floor, plenty of room for the kids to run around. Your father and I will take the penthouse, obviously. Cal can keep his little office on the ground floor. It's only fair. Fair? The word echoed in the silent office. My building. My $2.3 million investment secured with my money, my credit, my sweat. They were carving it up like a Thanksgiving turkey. The message was followed by a series of cheerful replies. Thumbs up emojis. My brother Leo writing, "Finally, a space that understands my creative needs." My Aunt Carol chimed in, "Oh, how wonderful! A true family legacy." My hands started shaking. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a coup. I scrolled up. The chat history Chloe sent was a nightmare. Pictures of them, my mother, my father, my brother, my aunt, standing in the lobby. Selfies from the rooftop deck, my rooftop deck. They were inside. Right now. Another text from Chloe came through. They're all here. Mom is throwing some kind of legacy party. You have to get here. I didn't text back. I grabbed my keys, my wallet, and my phone, my mind racing faster than I'd ever known. On my way out, I saw it through the large plate glass window of my office. In the main lobby, a banner was hung across the marble wall. In flowing, arrogant script, it read, Warren Family Legacy Celebration. My family wasn't just invading my building. They were celebrating its conquest. And as I stormed toward the entrance, a cold, hard resolve settled in my chest. The party was over. To understand why they thought they could do this, you have to understand my family. You have to go back further than the spreadsheets and the bank loans. You have to go back to a scraped knee, a broken window, and a report card. In the Warren household, there were 2 sets of rules. One for my older brother, Leo, and one for me. Leo was the artist, the dreamer, the golden child. He was charming, handsome, and utterly allergic to responsibility. When he was 17, he took our dad's brand new sedan for a joyride and wrapped it around an oak tree. My parents' reaction? Relief that he was okay, followed by a trip to the dealership the next weekend to buy him a safer car for his birthday. They didn't want the accident to damage his creative spirit. A month later, I brought home a report card with 5 A's and 1 B+. My father, Richard, looked at it, his brow furrowed, and asked, "What happened in history, Caleb? You're not applying yourself." That was the world I grew up in. Leo's failures were romanticized. My successes were merely the expected baseline. He was an investment of love. I was an investment of expectation. This dynamic followed us into adulthood. Leo drifted from one artistic venture to another, all funded by my parents. He needed money for canvases, For a loft in a trendy part of the city? For a trip to Europe to find his muse? The answer was always yes. When I was 27, I had an idea. I'd been working in real estate for a few years, learning the ropes, saving every single penny. I saw a niche market for redeveloping small, neglected commercial properties. I drafted a business plan for what would become Harbor Line Development. It was solid, but I was young. The banks wanted more collateral than I had. I needed a cosigner on an initial small business loan, just $15,000 to get the LLC properly set up and secure a line of credit. I hated that I had to ask, but I had no choice. I went to my parents. My father looked at my proposal like it was written in a foreign language. My mother, Eleanor, however, saw an opportunity. Not a financial one, but one for control. "Of course, we'll help you, dear," she said, her voice dripping with maternal generosity. Family helps family. She co-signed the loan. And for the next 18 months, that $15,000 was a chain around my neck. Every family dinner came with a side of business advice. "Caleb, are you sure you should be buying in that neighborhood? Caleb, I saw a documentary about a real estate crash. You need to be careful." Leo would smirk from across the table. "Don't worry, little brother. If it all goes bust, you can always come work for me when I'm famous." The loan wasn't a lifeline. It was leverage. It was their way of staying involved, of claiming a piece of my dream before it even had a chance to breathe. They never asked for financial reports, but they demanded emotional ones. They wanted to be the silent and not-so-silent partners in my life. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that as long as that loan existed, Harbor Line would never truly be mine. It would always be the little business Eleanor and Richard helped their son start. That narrative was unacceptable. So I worked. I worked like a man possessed, driven by a quiet fury. I paid that loan off in 18 months, not the 5 years the bank gave me. And the day I made the final payment was one of the best days of my life. The bank sent me a letter confirming the loan was paid in full. I held it in my hands, and it felt heavier than any check I'd ever written. It was a declaration of independence. But I knew that a piece of paper from a bank wouldn't be enough to change the narrative my mother had so carefully crafted. I needed something more. I needed her signature. My lawyer at the time, an older gentleman named Stan, had advised me when we first set up the LLC. "Once that loan is paid, Cal," he'd said, peering at me over his glasses, "you get your mother to sign an amendment to the operating agreement. Remove her as a signatory. Clean break. No ambiguities." His words echoed in my mind. No ambiguities. I scheduled a meeting with my mother. Not at her house, not over dinner. I booked a small conference room at a neutral location and had the amended LLC documents delivered by a courier. I wanted it to be official, sterile, and undeniable. She arrived, dressed impeccably as always, a small, puzzled smile on her face. "Caleb, this is all so formal. Is everything all right?" "Everything's great, Mom," I said, keeping my voice even. I pushed the single-page document and a pen across the polished table towards her. "I've paid off the initial business loan. This is just the paperwork to update the LLC records, removing you as a cosigner. It's just a formality to clean up the corporate file." She picked up the document, but her eyes didn't scan the legal text. They were fixed on me. The smile vanished, replaced by a flicker of something I couldn't quite name. It wasn't anger. It was appraisal, like she was reevaluating an asset. "Well, I'm so proud of you, dear," she said, her tone a little too bright. "But is this really necessary? We're family. We don't need all this paperwork between us. It feels so cold." This was the moment I had to stand my ground. "It is necessary," I said, firmly but respectfully. "It's for the business. Keeps things clean for taxes, for future investors, for the banks. It's standard practice." She let out a small, theatrical sigh. "If you insist. It just seems like you're trying to push your mother out." The words were designed to be a guilt trip, a final test of her leverage. I didn't take the bait. I just looked at her, my expression unwavering, and slid the pen a little closer to her hand. "It's just business, Mom," She held my gaze for a long moment, then picked up the pen. Her signature was a flourish of elegant loops and sharp angles. As she signed, she said something I would never forget. You know, your father and I always thought of this as a family inheritance you were building. Something for all of us. I didn't know it then, but that single sentence wasn't an expression of pride. It was a statement of intent. She signed the paper, officially severing her legal tie to my company. But in her mind, she was just letting me borrow it for a little while longer. She slid the document back to me, the ink still wet. There. All done. Now, are you going to take your mother out for lunch? I did. And through the entire meal, I felt a sense of unease. A feeling that I had won a battle, but the war was far from over. I just had no idea what battlefield she would choose next. Back in the present, I was barreling down the interstate towards the Alder Street building, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. The sterile memory of my mother signing that document felt like a lifetime ago. That legal piece of paper was my shield, my proof. But what good was a shield when the enemy was already inside the castle walls? I hit speakerphone and dialed my building manager, Marcus Jones. He was a good man, reliable, had been with me for years. He answered on the second ring, his voice harried. Cal, thank God. I was just about to call you. Your family is here. A lot of them. They said you knew. I didn't know, Marcus. I cut him off, my voice sharp. How did they get in? The main doors are keycard access only after hours on a Sunday. There was a pause. I could hear the background chatter of my relatives, laughing, their voices echoing in my lobby. Marcus lowered his voice. Your mother. She showed up an hour ago. She had some paperwork. Old Harbor Line LLC documents. It had her name on it as a co-signer. She said she was a co-founder and that you'd organized a family event and forgotten to give her the new keycards. My stomach dropped. Those were the original incorporation papers, from before she signed the amendment. They were legally obsolete, but to a layman they looked official. It was a calculated, brilliant, and deeply deceitful move. Marcus, I said, my voice dangerously calm. She is not a co-founder. She has no authority to enter the building. I need you to understand that. I see that now, he stammered. Cal, I'm so sorry. She was so convincing. She talked about the Warren legacy and how proud she was of you. She even had a catering crew with her. It all clicked into place. The timing, a quiet Sunday. The method, old, misleading paperwork. The excuse, a surprise party that played on a manager's desire to be helpful. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment idea born from entitlement. This was a planned invasion. It's not your fault, Marcus. You were manipulated. But I need you to do something for me. Do not let anyone leave. Just try to keep them in the lobby area if you can. I'm 5 minutes out. What are you going to do? He asked, a note of panic in his voice. I'm going to reestablish who owns this property, I said and hung up. My next call was to my lawyer, David Chin. He was the opposite of old Stan, young, sharp, and digitally savvy. He picked up instantly. David, it's Cal Warren. I have an emergency. I explained the situation in short, clipped sentences. The group chat, the old paperwork, the party in my lobby. He listened without interrupting, the sign of a true professional. When I finished, he didn't offer sympathy. He offered a plan. I have digital copies of the fully executed LLC amendment, the one removing your mother, time-stamped and filed with the state. I also have the deed to the Alder Street property, which is in the LLC's name, an entity you are the sole owner of. Where are you? Pulling up to the building now, I said, screeching into a parking spot. Good, David said, his voice turning to steel. Don't engage them alone. I'm sending the documents to your phone right now. I'm also calling the building's private security firm we have on retainer. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Wait for me, Cal. Let's do this by the book so it sticks. I looked at the lobby, teeming with people who shared my blood but not my reality. Waiting was the last thing I wanted to do. But David was right. This wasn't just about kicking them out. This was about making sure they could never, ever get back in. My finger hovered over the security firm's number. David had just texted me. I took a deep breath. 15 minutes, I said. Then the reclamation begins. The 15 minutes I waited for David felt like 15 years. I sat in my car, watching my relatives through the glass doors of the lobby. They were drinking champagne, my champagne probably, from a case I kept in the building for client celebrations. My brother Leo was holding court, gesturing expansively with a flute in his hand, no doubt describing which wall he'd knock down to achieve artistic flow. My mother, Eleanor, drifted through the crowd like a queen, accepting hugs and compliments on her beautiful family home. The sight of it all, the sheer audacity, stoked the cold fire in my gut into a raging inferno. A sleek black sedan pulled up behind me. David Chun stepped out, a leather briefcase in his hand, his expression calm and unreadable. A second vehicle, a standard security SUV, parked behind him, and two uniformed guards emerged. They were large, imposing men, and their presence instantly changed the calculus of the evening. "Ready?" David asked as he reached my car. "More than," I said, my jaw tight. We walked towards the entrance, the security guards flanking us. The moment we stepped through the doors, a hush fell over the lobby. Every head turned. The laughter died in their throats. My mother was the first to recover. Her face broke into a wide, disingenuous smile. "Caleb, darling, you're here. We were hoping you'd make it to our little celebration." I ignored her. My eyes scanned the room, meeting the confused and guilty faces of my aunts, uncles, and cousins. I looked at Leo, whose smug expression faltered for the first time. "What is this, Cal?" my father asked, stepping forward. "Who are these men?" Before I could answer, David stepped forward. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the silence with absolute authority. "Good evening. My name is David Chin. I am the legal counsel for Caleb Warren and for Harborline Development LLC, the sole and legal owner of this property." He opened his briefcase and produced a sheaf of papers. "This document," he said, holding up the first one, "is the current, state-filed operating agreement for Harborline Development. It recognizes Caleb Warren as the only member. Any previous versions are null and void." He held up a second document. "And this is the deed for 510 West Alder Street, registered to Harborline Development. In short, all of you are trespassing." A wave of murmurs rippled through the crowd. My Aunt Carol gasped theatrically. Eleanor stepped forward, her smile gone, replaced by a mask of wounded indignation. "Trespassing? Caleb, this is ridiculous. This is a family matter. Tell your lawyer to stand down." "He's my lawyer for a reason, Mom," I said, my voice level and cold. "Because you've turned a family matter into a legal one. You used fraudulent documents to gain access to my building." "Fraudulent?" she scoffed. "I helped you start this company. That paper had my name on it. And then you signed another piece of paper that took your name off it," David interjected smoothly. "A legally binding one." Leo pushed his way to the front. "This is insane. You're really going to kick your own family out onto the street." "You weren't on the street," I shot back. "You were in my penthouse, planning renovations." The two security guards took a step forward, their presence a silent, undeniable command. My mother played her final card. Tears welled in her eyes. "I can't believe you're doing this. After everything we've done for you, you're choosing money over your family." I looked her straight in the eye. The years of feeling second best, of having my achievements minimized, of being the responsible one while my brother was coddled. It all coalesced into a single moment of clarity. "No, Mom," I said, and the words felt like they were forged in iron. "I'm choosing ownership. I'm choosing the truth. The party is over. You all have 5 minutes to gather your things and leave." No one argued. The sight of the guards, the finality in my voice, the undeniable authority of the documents in David's hand. It was a combination they couldn't fight. In complete silence, they began to shuffle out, grabbing their coats and purses. The banner celebrating the Warren family legacy now seemed like a bitter joke. As my mother passed me, her face a mixture of fury and shock, she whispered, "You will regret this." I didn't flinch. I just watched them go until the lobby was empty. Almost empty. The heavy glass doors swung shut, leaving a profound silence in their wake. The lobby, which moments before had been filled with the buzz of a phantom victory party, now felt vast and empty. The only sounds were the hum of the ventilation and the distant city sirens. David was on the phone with the security firm, arranging for an overnight watch. Marcus, the building manager, was standing by the reception desk, looking pale and shaken. And in the center of the room, looking small and lost, was my sister, Chloe. She hadn't left with the others. While they had filed out in a cloud of resentful silence, she had remained behind, wringing her hands, her eyes filled with a conflict I knew all too well. I walked over to her. "You didn't have to stay," I said, my voice softer than it had been all evening. Tears streamed down her face. "Yes, I did," she whispered. "Cal, I am so sorry. I tried to warn you as soon as I realized what was happening." "You did?" I assured her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "That screenshot you sent, that was everything. Thank you." She shook her head, a fresh wave of tears coming. "No, you don't understand. It's worse than you think. This wasn't some crazy, spur-of-the-moment idea Mom had this morning." I felt a familiar cold dread creep up my spine. "What do you mean?" Chloe pulled out her phone, her fingers trembling as she scrolled. "They've been planning this for weeks, maybe longer." She showed me her screen. It wasn't the main family group chat. It was a smaller one, a splinter group. The members: Mom, Dad, Leo, and Aunt Carol. The chat was named Project Legacy. My blood turned to ice as I read. There were messages dating back over a month. They weren't just planning a party. They were orchestrating a takeover. Leo: "Found the original LLC docs. Mom's name is right there. That's our golden ticket." Mom: "We have to time it perfectly. Wait until Caleb is distracted with that big refinancing deal he mentioned. He'll be too stressed to fight back properly." Aunt Carol: "Make sure you get photos. We need to establish a narrative of this being a family enterprise from the start. Public perception is key." Dad: "Just be careful. I don't want this to turn into a legal mess." Mom: "It won't be a legal mess, Richard. It will be a family negotiation. He'll cave rather than risk a public fight. He's always hated confrontation." I felt sick. My own mother banking on my aversion to conflict. My brother digging up old papers like a grave robber. My aunt plotting a social media strategy. And my father, my quiet, non-committal father, offering a weak word of caution before letting it all happen. This was premeditated. They had targeted my moment of vulnerability. The refinancing deal was the biggest step forward for my company in 3 years. They knew it was a delicate, high-stakes negotiation. They had weaponized their knowledge of my life against me. They were going to squat, I said, the realization hitting me with the force of a physical blow. They were going to move in, change the locks, and dare me to evict them, counting on me to settle, to give them a piece of the company or a floor in the building just to make the public humiliation go away. Chloe nodded, wiping her eyes. They were talking about lawyers, about how to frame it as a dispute over a verbal agreement from years ago. They thought you'd pay anything to avoid a scandal, especially with your investors watching. I handed the phone back to her, my mind reeling. The betrayal was so much deeper, so much more venomous than I had imagined. This wasn't about entitlement. This was about extortion. And they had just shown me how far they were willing to go. David finished his call and walked over, his face grim. "Security is set for the night. I'm also recommending we get a locksmith here first thing in the morning to change every single lock and reprogram all keycards." "Do it," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "Do it all. And David," I added, meeting his eyes, "start preparing a case. I don't think this is over." He nodded slowly. "I think you're right." The next 24 hours were a blur of calculated action. At 8 a.m. Monday, a team of locksmiths descended on the Alder Street building, replacing every lock, from the main entrance to the rooftop maintenance closet. Every keycard was deactivated and anew, encrypted system was put in place. By noon, the building was a fortress, accessible only to me, my staff, and our tenants. I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. I had secured the physical territory, but I had severely underestimated my family's next line of attack. The battlefield was about to shift from the physical world to the digital one. Started around 7 p.m. Monday night. My phone began buzzing with notifications. Friends from high school, distant cousins, former colleagues, all sending me the same link with a simple message. Dude, have you seen this? It was a public Facebook post from my brother, Leo. It featured a sepia-toned photo of our family from years ago, all of us smiling awkwardly at a holiday dinner. The caption was a masterpiece of manipulative fiction. Some of you know that my family helped my younger brother, Caleb, start his real estate business years ago. He wrote, "We poured our hearts, our savings, and our support into his dream, hoping to build a legacy for the whole Warren family. We were so proud. But success changes people. Yesterday, with no warning, Caleb brought in lawyers and security guards to throw his own mother and father out of the building they helped him build. He's choosing profits over people, bricks over blood. I'm heartbroken to see what he's become, but we won't be silenced." The post was a work of art. It painted me as a heartless corporate villain and them as the salt-of-the-earth family I had betrayed. It was filled with carefully chosen, emotionally charged words: hearts, savings, legacy, heartbroken. It conveniently left out the part about the group chat, the trespassing, and the attempted extortion. The comments section was a cesspool of outrage. People who had only ever heard my mother's side of any story were chiming in with their support. "Eleanor is the sweetest woman I know. I can't believe her own son would do this. Leo, stay strong. Some people forget where they came from. This is what happens when people get a little money. So sad." Then my Aunt Carol joined the fray, sharing Leo's post with her own commentary. "I was there. I saw it all. Poor Eleanor was just trying to bring the family together. Caleb's coldness was terrifying. This is a story about greed and a broken family. He should be ashamed." It was a coordinated PR assault. They were controlling the narrative, framing the entire incident to make me the aggressor. My phone was blowing up. My professional LinkedIn page was suddenly getting views from people in my mother's social circle. They weren't just airing dirty laundry. They were trying to publicly shame me into submission. I wanted to respond. I wanted to type out a furious rebuttal, posting the screenshots from the Project Legacy group chat, detailing every lie, every manipulation. I had the truth on my side. I called David. My voice was shaking with rage. "They're trying to ruin me. They're posting lies all over the internet." "I know. I'm looking at it right now," he said, his voice a calming anchor in my storm of fury. "And you are not going to respond. Not a single comment. Not a single post. You will remain silent." "Silent?" I exploded. "David, they're calling me a monster. This could damage my reputation. It could affect the refinancing deal." "That's exactly what they want," he said patiently. "They want to drag you into a mudslinging contest online, where facts don't matter and emotion is everything. They know your mother can play the victim better than anyone. We are not going to fight them on their turf. We're going to fight them on ours. With facts, with documents, and in a courtroom if necessary. For now, you say nothing. Let them show their entire hand." Hanging up the phone was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Every instinct screamed at me to defend myself. But I trusted David. So I sat there, in my silent, secure building, and watched as my own family systematically tried to tear down my name, one lie at a time. And the worst part was, I had a sinking feeling that this was just the opening salvo. The social media campaign wasn't just a random act of spite. As the week wore on, I realized, with a dawning horror, how surgically precise their timing had been. The climax of my multimillion-dollar refinancing deal for Harborline was a final presentation scheduled for that Friday. The meeting was with a consortium of investors led by a man named Robert Harrison, a sharp, old-school financier who valued stability and reputation above all else. On Wednesday afternoon, 2 days before the meeting, I received an email from Harrison's assistant. Mr. Harrison would like to schedule a brief preliminary call with you this afternoon to discuss some concerns that have arisen. Concerns. That word sent a chill down my spine. I took the call in my office with David patched in on mute. Harrison's voice was polite but distant. Caleb, we're very impressed with Harborline's portfolio. The numbers are excellent. However, some information has come to my attention regarding a rather public family dispute. We invest in people as much as we invest in assets, and we are, shall we say, averse to drama. My heart hammered against my ribs. They had gotten to him. Someone had made sure these Facebook posts, these whispers, had reached the one man I needed to impress. Mr. Harrison, I began, trying to keep my voice steady. What you're seeing online is a gross misrepresentation of the facts. It's a private family matter that is being handled legally. I'm sure it is, he said, his tone unconvinced. But the optics, son, the optics are messy. Allegations of pushing your mother out of a company she helped found. It's not a good look. Let's keep our meeting on Friday. But I need you to know we'll be coming into it with some serious reservations. The call ended. I hung up the phone, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. They hadn't just attacked my character. They had attacked my livelihood. They had put a dagger to the throat of the deal that was meant to secure my company's future. How did he even find out? I asked David, pacing my office. Harrison is a private man. He's not scrolling through Facebook. Someone sent it to him, David said grimly, or sent it to someone who they knew would get it to him. The question of who hung in the air. How did they know the details of my refinancing deal? I had been careful, telling only a few trusted people. And then, a text came in from Chloe. Cal, I think I know how they knew about your meeting. I'm so sorry. My blood ran cold. I called her immediately. Her voice was a choked whisper. It was Uncle Frank, she said, and I could hear her crying. Frank Miller. He wasn't a real uncle, but he had been my father's best friend since childhood. He was at every Thanksgiving, every Christmas. I'd gone fishing with him. He'd given me my first beer. I had lunch with him a month ago and, in a moment of excitement, had told him about the upcoming Harrison deal. I trusted him. Chloe continued. I overheard Mom on the phone with him. She was thanking him for the information. Said it was exactly the leverage they needed. Cal, he told them everything. Your timeline, the investors' names, everything. The betrayal was so profound, so absolute, it left me breathless. It wasn't just my immediate family anymore. It was the entire ecosystem of my childhood, the people I was supposed to be able to trust, all conspiring against me. They had created a vice with my family on one side and my professional future on the other, and they were tightening it with all their might, waiting for me to break. Friday morning arrived with a sense of grim finality. I was supposed to be walking into the most important meeting of my career. Instead, I felt like I was walking to my own execution. The pressure from Harrison was immense, but the public smearing campaign was the real weight on my shoulders. I knew my family was counting on me to be distracted, emotionally exhausted, and desperate. They were right. I was in my office, going over my presentation one last time, trying to push the image of Uncle Frank's smiling, treacherous face out of my mind, when my assistant buzzed me. Cal, there's a process server here to see you. My blood turned to ice. Process server. There was only one reason one of them would be here. I walked out to the reception area. A man in a cheap suit stood there, holding a thick manila envelope. Caleb Warren? He asked flatly. Yes, I said, my voice a croak. He handed me the envelope. You've been served. He turned and walked out without another word. I stood there for a long moment, the envelope feeling like it weighed 100 pounds. My hands trembled as I tore it open. Inside was a legal summons. My mother, Eleanor Warren, and my brother, Leo Warren, were suing me. They were suing for full ownership of Harborline Development LLC, citing an alleged verbal partnership agreement and claiming I had fraudulently pushed them out of the business. It was all there, laid out in dense legalese. It was a complete work of fiction, A legal document built on the same lies as Leo's Facebook post. But the lies were now official. They were filed with the court. But that wasn't the worst part. Tucked inside the summons was a second document. It was a motion for a temporary restraining order against my company's primary operating accounts. And scrawled at the bottom was a judge's signature. It had been granted. Effective immediately, my business accounts were frozen. I stumbled back into my office and sank into my chair. The papers spread out on my desk. Couldn't make payroll. I couldn't pay my contractors. I couldn't pay the mortgage on this very building. And the multi-million-dollar refinancing deal? It was dead. Utterly and completely dead. You can't refinance a company whose assets are frozen by a court order. They had done it. They had found the one move that could bring my entire world crashing down. They didn't need to win the lawsuit. The lawsuit itself was the weapon. By freezing my accounts, they had cut off my company's oxygen supply. They thought I would have no choice but to surrender, to come to the settlement table and give them whatever they wanted just to be able to breathe again. I picked up the phone to call David. A wave of pure, unadulterated despair washing over me. This was no longer a fight for a building or for my reputation. This was a fight for my survival. And for the first time, I felt a sliver of doubt. For the first time, I wasn't sure if I could win. The weeks leading up to the preliminary injunction hearing were the longest of my life. My company was paralyzed. I had to have painful conversations with my employees, assuring them I would make payroll out of my personal savings, but that all projects, promotions, and bonuses were on indefinite hold. The Harrison deal was officially scuttled, the investors backing away from the unforeseen legal complications. Every day was a new battle just to stay afloat. My family, meanwhile, was on a media tour. My mother gave an interview to a local news blog, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief as she spoke of her stolen legacy. The headline read, "Local Mother Fights Son for Family Business." The court of public opinion was convicting me without a trial. The day of the hearing arrived. The courtroom was small and stuffy. I sat beside David at one table. Across the aisle sat my mother, my father, Leo, and their lawyer, a man named Arthur Vance. Vance was exactly the kind of lawyer you'd expect. Slicked back hair, an expensive suit, and a smile that never reached his eyes. He specialized in messy family business disputes, which meant he specialized in turning emotion into a weapon. The hearing was to determine if the freeze on my accounts should be upheld until a full trial could take place. If we lost, my company would likely bleed out and die before we ever got to a trial. This was it. This was the whole game. Vance called my mother, Eleanor, as his first witness. She walked to the stand, a picture of quiet, maternal grace. Vance handled her with theatrical gentleness. "Mrs. Warren," he began, his voice soft, "could you please tell the court about the founding of Harbor Line Development?" "Of course," she said, her voice trembling slightly for effect. "My son, Caleb, he was so ambitious. I was so proud. My husband and I, we gave him his start. We co-signed his first loan. We gave him our savings." "Objection," David said calmly. "There were no savings given. Only a co-signature on a $15,000 loan that was paid back with interest." Sustained. The judge, a stern-faced woman named Judge Thompson, said, "Stick to the facts, Mr. Vance." Vance smiled, unbothered. "Of course, Your Honor." "Mrs. Warren, was there an understanding, a family agreement, that this business was a joint venture?" "Oh, absolutely," my mother said, looking at me with pleading, sorrowful eyes. "We always talked about it as our family legacy, something we were all building together. I never dreamed my own son would use some legal trick, some piece of paper, to push me out, to take everything for himself." She started to cry softly. It was a brilliant performance. She was playing the role of the loving, naive mother betrayed by her cold, calculating son. Vance was letting her paint a picture for the judge, a picture of familial trust torn apart by corporate greed. I sat there, my hands clenched into fists under the table. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and call her a liar. I could feel the judge's eyes on me, her expression unreadable. I knew how this looked. It looked bad. David remained perfectly still beside me. He didn't seem rattled. As Vance finished his saccharine sweet examination, David's phone, which was lying face down on the table, gave a soft buzz. He glanced at it. It was a text from Chloe. He slid the phone towards me. The text read, "I've got something. It's bad. Mom and Leo were talking in the hallway before the hearing. I recorded it. Sending the file now. I'm so sorry you have to hear this." A small audio file was attached. My heart pounded. David gave me a slight nod. He stood up to begin his cross-examination. "Mrs. Warren," David started, his voice respectful, "you testified that you believed you were a partner in this business. Is that correct?" "Yes," she said, dabbing her eyes. "In my heart, I always was." "And you feel that your son, Caleb, has cheated you out of your rightful share of this family inheritance?" "Yes," she whispered. "He's broken my heart." I watched as the audio file finished downloading on David's phone. He calmly plugged a small cord into his laptop. "Your Honor," he said, turning to the judge, "I believe I have a piece of evidence that speaks directly to Mrs. Warren's true motivations. With your permission." Judge Thompson looked intrigued. "Proceed, Mr. Chun." Vance shot to his feet. "Objection. We haven't seen this evidence. It was just obtained," David said smoothly, "and it is a direct rebuttal to the witness's testimony." The judge waved Vance down. "I'll allow it." A palpable tension filled the courtroom. My mother shifted on the witness stand, her mask of sorrow momentarily replaced by a flicker of confusion. Leo and my father leaned forward at their table. Arthur Vance looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. David walked calmly to his laptop. "Mrs. Warren," he began, "let's start with the paperwork you found so cold and unnecessary. Your Honor, I'd like to present Defense Exhibit A." The screen on the wall flickered to life. It was a high-resolution scan of the LLC Operating Agreement Amendment. My mother's elegant, flowing signature was at the bottom, right next to a notary's official stamp. "Mrs. Warren, is this your signature?" She squinted at the screen. "Well, yes, but I didn't understand what it was." "You didn't understand a one-page document titled Amendment to Remove Member?" David asked, a hint of steel in his voice. He didn't wait for an answer. "Now, let's move on to the events of 2 Sundays ago. You testified that you were hosting a simple family gathering. Your Honor, Defense Exhibit B." The image changed. It was a still frame from the security camera in my lobby. It showed my family, champagne glasses in hand, standing under the Warren Family Legacy Celebration banner. Then David hit play. The video was silent, but the images spoke volumes. It showed my brother Leo and my father using a tape measure in the penthouse. It showed my Aunt Carol pointing out spots for new furniture. It showed my mother directing a catering staff like she owned the place. It didn't look like a party. It looked like an occupation. My mother's face went pale. Vance was on his feet again, sputtering objections, but the judge just waved him off, her eyes glued to the screen. "And now, Your Honor," David said, his voice dropping slightly, "for the matter of motivation, Mrs. Warren has testified that this lawsuit is about her broken heart and a stolen inheritance. But I believe the court deserves to hear her true feelings on the matter, in her own words." He pressed another key. A sound file opened. And then, my mother's voice filled the silent courtroom. It wasn't the soft, trembling voice from the witness stand. This was her real voice. Sharp, conspiratorial, and dripping with contempt. "Audio recording, Eleanor." "Stop worrying, Leo. The lawsuit is just to apply pressure. We freeze his accounts, he starts to panic. He'll settle before this ever gets to a real trial rather than risk his reputation with those fancy investors of his." "Audio recording, Leo. You're sure he'll cave?" "Audio recording, Eleanor. Please. He's my son. I know his weaknesses. He hates a scene. We just have to make the scene big enough, and he'll pay anything to make it go away. A few million, a permanent salary for you. It's all on the table once he's desperate enough. This isn't about winning in court, darling. It's about winning the negotiation." The recording ended. Absolute, bone-deep silence. You could have heard a pin drop on the worn courthouse carpet. I looked at my family's table. My father looked like he had been turned to stone. Leo's face was a mess of shock and fury, his mouth hanging open. Vance was staring at his client, his professional mask completely gone, replaced by pure, unadulterated horror. He had been played too. But my mother, I will never forget the look on my mother's face. The mask of the gentle, wronged matriarch dissolved. What was left was cold, hard fury. The look in her eyes was not of a mother at her son. It was the look of a predator whose prey had just turned around and ripped out its throat. The spell was broken. The truth, in all its ugly, undeniable glory, was out. Judge Thompson slowly took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. She looked at my mother on the witness stand, then at Vance, then at me. Her expression was thunderous. "Mr. Vance," she said, her voice dangerously quiet, "do you have anything at all to say for your clients?" Arthur Vance opened his mouth, then closed it. He slowly shook his head and sat down, defeated. This is the moment that changed everything, when I finally took back control of my life. Thank you for sticking with me this far, you're amazing. If you could do me a huge favor and like this video and comment with the number 1 below, it lets me know you've been on this journey with me. It doesn't just help more people find this story. It tells me that my experiences mean something to someone out there. Your support is the biggest motivation for me to keep sharing the rest of this journey. Judge Thompson put her glasses back on. She surveyed the room, her gaze lingering on my mother, who sat frozen on the witness stand, all pretense stripped away. The silence stretched on, thick with the fallout of the audio recording. When the judge finally spoke, her voice was like the cracking of a glacier, cold, immense, and unstoppable. "In my 15 years on this bench," she began, her eyes boring into my mother and then her lawyer, "I have seen a great many frivolous lawsuits. I have seen family disputes weaponized for financial gain. But rarely have I witnessed such a blatant, premeditated, and malicious abuse of the judicial process." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. Arthur Vance seemed to be shrinking in his expensive suit. "This court is not a tool for extortion," she continued, her voice rising with controlled anger. "It is not a stage for you to perform a play of manufactured victimhood to pressure a family member into a settlement. You have lied under oath. You have filed a lawsuit based on a foundation of pure fiction. You have deliberately and with malice aforethought sought to cripple a legitimate business for your own selfish gain." She turned her attention to Vance. "And you, Mr. Vance, while I will grant you the slimmest possibility that you were unaware of the depth of your client's deception, your failure to perform basic due diligence is an embarrassment to your profession. You took this case on contingency, I presume, hoping for a quick, lucrative settlement." Vance could only manage a slight, defeated nod. "Let this be a very expensive lesson for you," Judge Thompson said sharply. She then looked back at my mother and Leo. "The temporary restraining order on the plaintiff's business accounts is hereby dissolved, effective immediately." A wave of relief so powerful it almost made me dizzy washed over me. I could breathe again. My company could breathe again. "Furthermore," the judge went on, her voice like granite, "this case, number 74B21, is dismissed. With prejudice. With prejudice." Those 2 words were the final nails in the coffin of their scheme. It meant they could never, ever file this lawsuit against me again. It was over. Done. "And finally," she said, leaning forward, "this court awards full legal fees and associated damages to the defendant, Mr. Caleb Warren, to be paid in full by the plaintiffs, Ms. Eleanor Warren and Mr. Leo Warren. Mr. Chun, you will submit your billing records to the court by the end of the week." My jaw dropped. David gave my arm a slight squeeze. Not only had we won, but they were now on the hook for every single dollar this farce had cost me. "And I will be issuing a permanent injunction," the judge concluded, her eyes locking onto my mother one last time, "prohibiting Ms. Warren and Mr. Warren from making any further defamatory or false statements regarding Mr. Caleb Warren or Harborline Development, in public or in private, online or otherwise. This hearing is adjourned." The gavel came down with a deafening crack. It was the sound of justice. It was the sound of freedom. The moment the judge left the bench, the courtroom erupted in muted chaos. Arthur Vance was packing his briefcase with frantic energy, avoiding eye contact with everyone. My father was helping my mother, who seemed to be in a state of shock, down from the witness stand. Leo was just staring at me, his face a mask of pure, unfiltered hatred. David and I gathered our papers slowly, methodically. There was no need to rush. For the first time in weeks, time was on my side. "Let's go," David said quietly. "Let's get some fresh air." We walked out of the courtroom and into the long marble hallway. The weight that had been crushing my chest for weeks was gone. The air felt lighter. The sunlight streaming through the tall windows seemed brighter. As we headed for the exit, I heard her voice behind me. "Caleb." I stopped. David stopped with me. I turned around slowly. My mother was walking towards me, my father trailing a few steps behind her like a shadow. Her face was a wreck. The calculated composure was gone, replaced by a raw, desperate panic. The queen had lost her crown, and she didn't know what to do. "Caleb, please," she said, her voice raspy. "We can still talk about this. We can fix this." I looked at her. I really looked at her. I didn't see my mother. I saw a stranger. A woman who had been so consumed by entitlement and jealousy that she was willing to destroy her own son to get what she wanted. I saw a woman who wasn't sorry for what she did, but sorry she got caught. "Fix what?" I asked, my voice calm. "Fix the lies you told on the witness stand? Fix the audio recording of you plotting to extort me? Fix the fact that you tried to bankrupt my company and ruin my life? It wasn't supposed to be like this," she stammered, reaching a hand out towards me. I wanted what was fair." "Fair." The word came out as a hollow laugh. "You have no idea what that word means. You think fair is getting a piece of something you never earned? You think fair is punishing one son for his success while rewarding another for his failures? Your idea of fair is what got us here." My father finally spoke up, his voice weak. "He's your mother, Cal. And I am her son," I said, my gaze never leaving her face. "And she tried to destroy me. For money. For pride. I don't even know what it was for anymore." She looked at me, her eyes pleading. For the first time, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no pain. Just empty. The connection, the invisible thread that ties a son to his mother, had been irrevocably severed. "We need to talk," she repeated, her voice cracking. "We're family." I took a deep breath. "No," I said, and the single word was the heaviest and lightest thing I had ever uttered. "There's nothing left to talk about." I turned my back on her, on both of them, and with David by my side, I walked out of the courthouse and into the sunshine, and I did not look back. The 6 months after the court case were like waking up from a long, suffocating nightmare. The first order of business was unfreezing my life. With the court order in hand, David had the hold on my accounts lifted within hours. The feeling of seeing my company's finances flowing again was indescribable. It was like oxygen rushing back into my lungs. The news of my victory, and the dramatic details of the hearing, spread quietly but quickly through the business community. Arthur Vance, I heard, had taken a long sabbatical. The local news blog that had published my mother's tearful story ran a small retraction on its back page. Robert Harrison, the investor, even sent me a short, courteous email. "Congratulations on your vindication. Perhaps we can revisit our discussion in the new year." I politely declined. I was done with people who ran at the first sign of trouble. My company needed healing. I gathered my small, loyal team and laid everything bare. I told them how close we came to the edge, and I announced that, thanks to their patience, I was not only making up all missed payroll but was issuing a survival and loyalty bonus to every single one of them. The relief in the room was tangible. We had weathered the storm together. We were more than a company. We were a crew that had survived a shipwreck. The best change, however, was Chloe. After the trial, she had a final, painful falling out with our parents and brother. They accused her of betrayal, of siding against her own family. Her response was simple: I sided with the truth. She moved out of her apartment, which my parents had been subsidizing, and for a few weeks she stayed with me. During that time, I saw a side of her I'd never seen before. She was sharp, organized, and had a brilliant understanding of public relations. Ironic, given how our family had tried to use it against me. You know, I said to her one evening over takeout, I need someone to handle my company's communications. Someone I can trust implicitly. A smile spread across her face. Are you offering me a job, big brother? I'm offering you a partnership, I said. Let's build this thing together. The right way. She started the next Monday. As Director of Communications for Harborline Development, she was a natural. She helped me craft a new story for the company, one focused on integrity, resilience, and ethical development. Business started booming. Freed from the dead weight of family drama, I was more focused and ambitious than ever. We acquired 2 new properties. We broke ground on a community-focused commercial center. We were not just surviving, we were thriving. But something still felt incomplete. The whole ordeal had started because I had to build my dream alone, without a safety net. I kept thinking about all the other young entrepreneurs out there, especially women like Chloe, who had the talent and the drive but lacked the family support or the initial capital to get started. So, on the 1-year anniversary of the Eviction, Harborline Development announced the launch of a new foundation, the Warren NextGen Initiative. It was a fund dedicated to providing seed capital and mentorship to young entrepreneurs who were starting businesses without family financial backing. Our first recipient was a brilliant young woman developing sustainable building materials in her garage. At the press conference announcing the initiative, with Chloe standing proudly beside me, a reporter asked what inspired me to start the fund. I looked out at the crowd and for the first time, I told a small piece of my story. I believe that your success should be determined by the strength of your ideas and the sweat of your brow, I said. Not by the family you were born into. This fund is for the builders, the dreamers, the ones who are doing it on their own. I want them to know they aren't alone. It was the best revenge I could have ever imagined. Turning the poison they had poured on me into medicine for someone else. Life settled into a new, healthier rhythm. Work was challenging and rewarding. My relationship with Chloe deepened from siblings into true partners and best friends. We'd have lunch every day, not just talking business, but about everything and nothing. The gaping wound my family had left in my life was slowly being filled by a new family I was building for myself. One based on trust, respect, and shared goals. I didn't seek out news of my parents or Leo, but sometimes it found me anyway. A distant cousin mentioned at a wedding that my mother and father were being audited by the IRS. Apparently, the financial claims they had made in the lawsuit, claims of having invested their savings into my company, had attracted some unwanted attention. Their attempt to rewrite history had ended up putting their own finances under a microscope. There was a certain grim irony in that. Another time, a friend from my hometown told me that Leo had moved to Portland. He tried to launch a new art series, but his reputation in our community was shot. No one wanted to buy paintings from the guy who tried to sue his own brother. He'd left town quietly, leaving a trail of unpaid debts behind him. It was a sad, predictable end to the story of the golden child who never learned that you have to earn your success. I never felt happy hearing these things. There was no triumphant, I told you so moment. There was just a quiet, profound sadness for the people they could have been, for the family we could have been, if not for the poison of jealousy and entitlement. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, about 18 months after the trial, a letter arrived at my office. It was a simple, cream-colored envelope, addressed to me in my mother's unmistakable, elegant handwriting. There was no return address, but I knew who it was from instantly. I held it in my hands for a long time. My first instinct was to tear it in half and throw it in the trash. What could she possibly have to say that would change anything? An apology? A justification? More blame? I took it into my office and closed the door. I sat at my desk, the same desk where I had first seen Chloe's frantic text messages all that time ago. I looked out the window at the bustling city. From this angle, on a clear day, I could just see the top corner of the 510 West Alder building. My building. The one that started it all. Part of me was curious. The little boy inside me. The one who had spent his whole life craving a simple "good job, son." Wanted to know if she was finally sorry. He wanted to believe that people could change, that his mother could see the error of her ways and want to make amends. But the man who had sat in that courtroom, the man who had his life's work threatened, the man who had listened to that cold, calculating audio recording knew better. He knew that some apologies are not about healing the other person, but about easing one's own guilt. He knew that opening that letter was opening a door I had fought so hard to close, a door that could potentially lead right back into the cycle of manipulation and pain. What if it was a genuine apology? Would I have to respond? Would I be expected to forgive? And what did forgiveness even mean in this context? Forgiving didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean I had to let them back into my life, to give them another chance to hurt me. I weighed the letter in my hand. It was just paper and ink, but it felt like it contained all the weight of my past. All the hurt, all the anger, all the disappointment. After a long, quiet moment, I made a decision. I didn't open it. I didn't have to. My peace was more important than her words. I slid the unopened letter into the bottom drawer of my desk. It joined a small collection of other things, a faded photograph of a family that no longer existed, a tie my father had given me for a college graduation he barely paid attention to, a program from a school play where Leo had the lead and I was a tree. It was a box of relics from a life that wasn't mine anymore. My life was here in this office. It was in the blueprints for our next project spread across the table. It was in the cheerful goodbye my sister Chloe called out as she left for the day. It was in the quiet satisfaction of knowing that everything around me was built on a foundation of truth and hard work. I realized then that closure isn't something someone else can give you. It's not contained in a letter or an apology. Closure is a decision. It's the decision to stop letting the past define your present. It's the choice to build a future so bright that the shadows of yesterday can't reach you. My family thought they knew my weakness. They believed I was the boy who hated confrontation, the son who would always back down for the sake of a false peace. And for a long time they were right, but they pushed me too far. They forced me to find a strength I never knew I had. In trying to take everything from me, they inadvertently gave me the one thing I truly needed, my freedom. Freedom from their expectations, their manipulations, and their twisted definition of love and family. My real family is the team that stood by me when our accounts were frozen. It's my sister, who chose truth over blood. It's the young entrepreneurs we fund, who are building their own legacies. Family, I've learned, isn't just about who you share a last name with. It's about who shows up when the storm hits. It's about who helps you rebuild after it passes. I looked at the drawer, at the sealed envelope hidden inside. Some letters don't need to be read. Some explanations come too late to matter. And some doors, once you close them, are best left locked forever. I shut the drawer, the sound a quiet, final click in the evening stillness. And then I got back to work, building my own legacy on my own terms. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it resonated with you in some way. It's a reminder that sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice to protect your own peace and your own future? I'd be honored to read your experience in the comments below. And if you found value in my story, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss what I share next. Your support truly means the world.